Alright guys, so Quantum's back here again with the second installation of the SL120 series. This time we're going to be breaking down an optimized strength / dex build. It's something that's fairly basic but still very powerful in the game. So again, we're SL120 and you're going to see in our attribute allocation here, the main thing to point out is our endurance, strength, and dexterity are all at 40. Our Vigor took a little bit of a hit from our previous build where we had like 40 Vigor or 39 Vigor or something like that. But again, the marginal benefits of each additional point of Vigor after around 30 starts to become less and less. So you can more or less suffer with less Vigor for the most part, especially when you're putting some points to your defense. But this build's pretty basic. We kept our attunement at the base of 10, which is what the starting is for the Knight. Our vitality, we upped it to 25 just so that we can use some of the heavier weapons with the heavier armor for the poise and extra defense. It does make a bit of a difference, I think, and we'll be seeing that in the actual PvP matches. And then of course we have our strength and dexterity. Now our strength is really 35, but in our breakdown for the rings we actually are using the Knight ring, which increases your strength by 5. So with that, it pumps it up to around 40, and then our dexterity is 37. But again, with the Karthus milk ring, we get an extra 3 dexterity, so we get up to 40, or our dexterity bumped up to 40 with that. Our intelligence and our faith, if you started off with a class that had less intelligence than faith, you probably wouldn't need to put it to 10. But since I started off as a Knight and I only needed 1 point in order to get it up to 10, I just put the extra 1 point in both intelligence and faith, just so I can use flame weapon if I wanted to on some non-boss weapons that I wanted to buff. And it does come in handy when you want to use those kind of weapons. So it's a pretty good build overall. We have 1 attunement slot. We got 93 FP. Our HP I think is around 1150 when we're not in Ember form or human form. And as you can see here, when we are in that form, we have 57 HP. Our stamina, again, standard across the board with the 40 endurance. With the Ring of Favor +2, we have 177 stamina. And our defense is actually pretty decent at 153, and our absorption is also decent given the armor that we have. So with that said, let's break down what we can kind of use with this class. Now, I've kind of narrowed it down to just a few weapons, and again, the point of this build is to squeeze out every last bit of damage you can from a weapon. So you can see right now with Delorean's Greatsword +5, it's doing 654 damage as a base. Okay, now this is absolutely insane because when you two-hand this weapon, or if you use the weapon skill, it does like a forward lunging attack, which actually I think increases your poise because I've never been hit out of that stance. And when it's on fire, when you buff the sword, the damage goes up to 734. So I think that increased it by like 80, right? And it lasts for 15 seconds, and the weapon, it hits really hard. But what's even more powerful with this specific weapon is when you do the forward stance to initiate the flame, you can follow it up and you can delay it a bit to kind of trick the opponent if they're trying to run at you. You can follow it up with a very powerful upward swing just like that, and it does a ton of damage. And when I say a ton of damage, trust me, it's going to take off like 75% of the opponent's health, and you're going to see that in some of the PvP matches that we use this weapon in. It's a very powerful, probably the highest damage weapon I've seen in the game so far. Absolutely insane. When you allocate your stats properly, you can just do absolute carnage with this weapon. It's insane. So another weapon that's kind of new is the refined Astora Greatsword, and refined infused weapons are going to be doing the most damage over sharp and heavy because again we have the balanced 40-40 in strength and dexterity, so we get the most amount of scaling through that. As you can see, the scaling damage from the Astora Greatsword when refined is more than the actual base damage. So this weapon, it does 546, and the reason we want to use this weapon is twofold. The first is we can infuse it, which is going to bump up the damage to 640, and the second is the R2 attack is actually fairly unique. It's, to my knowledge, the only greatsword that has a lunging attack, so that makes it very strong, and it's one of the weapons that, you know, can be very unique if you need to pull it out or something like that. Aside from that, with the the Farron Greatsword, the base damage at 40-40, 40 strength, 40 dexterity, that is 500, which is extremely powerful. This weapon is just a beast in PvP, and it's a beast for when you run into ganking sessions. And I have a pretty funny, like it's like a 3 No, it's a 1v4 where I invade somebody, and it's crazy. I end up killing like 2 phantoms the first time. I invade the same guy. I killed 3 phantoms before I died. It was nuts. But you're gonna see that a little later if you stay tuned for that. But this sword, you know, very, very good. It's very important to understand the moveset of the Farron Greatsword if you're gonna use it. Every time you swing, if you follow it up with a special attack, it's like sequential. So normally, if you just start off with the L1, you're gonna do 2 sweeps and then followed up by the overhead slash or overhead coming down attack. I don't even know what you would categorize that as. But if you start off with like a swing and then follow up into the L1, if you follow up with L1 again, you will not do a second sweeping attack. You'll actually do the overhead attack. So be very mindful of that. That kind of caught me off guard a little bit, and I made a few mistakes that I shouldn't have. But so if you're gonna do the normal swing, just do one of the L1 attacks, because you never really want to do the overhead attack. It's very bad and it leaves you wide open and it's easily dodgeable. So be very mindful of that. Aside from that, the rest of the weapons, you know, they're pretty standard top tier weapons. You got the got hard twin swords, as they say. The S stock, again, refined. The washing pole, surprisingly enough, gets the most damage when you just leave it plain, not refined, not sharp, not heavy, just plain old-fashioned washing pole. And you can see there the damage. So you got close to 400 with the got hard twin swords. You got close again to 400 with the S stock. 437, close to 440 with the washing pole, and then 514 with the Dragon Slayer spear. So very strong weapons. You know, you're basically squeezing out the maximum amount of damage from all your weapons. Aside from that, you kind of always want to have this fist weapon as your secondary, because you're going to be wanting to recover HP FP as you're using your special abilities. So just having this weapon in your offhand is actually very helpful, because the L2 with it is a parry. And I mean, you don't really need to swing with it, but if you need a really fast attack, it can do some decent damage. So I actually upgraded 2 of these to +10, and I usually would, you know, if I have to back off and recover some FP, I would have one in the other hand, because my weight still stays pretty low overall. You know, below 60 is, you know, below 70 is what you want always, but you know, below 60 is decent as well. So if I need to like kind of back off from my opponent, I can just switch out my weapon and recover my FP super quickly with 2 of these fist weapons at +10. So again, anything to kind of gain you a bit of an advantage in a fight is going to really make, or can make a difference if the battle is drawn out, especially. So with that said, the armor is pretty much just for fashion. Not the heaviest armor, but in my opinion, good defense to weight ratios. So we start off with the Delorean Helm solely because it's fashion. I mean, I know it's not a good armor piece, but it looks probably the best, I think. I think it looks really nice. Let's go into some light here. If I can even find some light. Yeah, I think it looks really nice, so I use that. The Wolf Knight armor, again, looks really nice. It has actually decent physical resistance, especially to slash, thrust, and strike. If you're coming up against you know, like a person who's using a lot of elemental, if they're not using like a katana or a weapon that's heavy with the slash, you can switch over to the Undead Legion armor. It's actually really good. It has really awesome physical resistances across the board, and it has decent elemental resistances across the board, and it has decent physical resistance except for slash. If you're coming up against katana or another weapon that does slash damage, you don't want to be using the Undead Legion armor. Handpiece, the Outrider Knight Gauntlet's decent, you know, good amount of poise, you know, good amount of physical resistance for the weight, and you know, decent elemental resistance. So that was just what I found was, you know, good lightweight, good defense. Still, you got more defense than weight, pretty much gives you an above 1 ratio for defense to weight. So it's overall, in my opinion, probably one of the better handpieces to use. And then finally, the Fallen Knight trousers, surprisingly enough, I found was or fit into my build most optimally. Apart from other leggings, maybe the Jailer's trousers would be a good option if you wanted to reduce the weight. But you know, if you're not too worried about weight, if you're still under the 70%, this leggings is surprisingly what I found to be the best one to use. So all in all, you know, armor pieces for each slot from different armor sets. So it's kind of unique. Equipment wise, for rings, staples across the board. Ring of Favor +2, Karthus Milk Ring for dexterity boosting. And again, I'm a stamina horse, so anything to recover stamina faster, I'm using the stamina recovery ring. And then if you wanted to go to 125 with this build and put the extra 5 points towards like strength, you could free up this slot and use something else, maybe like a Ring of Steel Protection. I'm not too sure how the poise works in this game, but to my knowledge, from what I've seen when I've been PvPing with this build, I don't really need the Wolf Ring +2. Overall, it's pretty good. You could also use the Farron Ring, or go back to the Dark Souls 2 days where you would ring swap out based on the kind of damage your opponent was doing. But I don't really find ring swapping and stuff all that useful in this game. Rightfully so, since you have the ability to heal, but I don't really find switching out to these rings make all that much of a difference in terms of damage reduction, but that's just me. So that wraps up the build, guys. Please click the link that just appeared on the screen there, or click the link in the description to be brought to part 2 of this video, where we'll be actually going through and PvPing in some matches with the weapons. See you on the other video, guys. Thanks for watching.